Quality Assurance Manager. She will present on matters related to registration. She will also speak towards compliance and standards. We also have with us Sergeant Kenny Jones. He would give us an update in terms of changes regarding traffic as we reopen the cruise season for 2022-23. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and I'll now turn you over to our Honorable Minister Carlos James.
Thank you very much, Jolene. Welcome, members of the media, those tuned in from various media platforms. This press briefing will provide stakeholders with information on plans for Tourism Month of activities starting tomorrow. We will see the handing over of the first draft of 3 chapters of the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And of course, we will discuss some tourism-related matters as we open the season ahead. Permit me first to congratulate our newly crowned Miss SVG, Jada Ross, who is present here with us this morning, and all of the contestants who represented their communities with such class and grace last evening or 2 evenings ago at the royal return. Also, I want to congratulate Avia Charles, who is head of the Beauty Shows Committee, and her team for putting together such a magnificent production and the execution and working with the contestants over the last few months. And I want to really commend the Beauty Shows Committee and the CDC for the organizing of the return of Miss SVG to all of the viewers and persons who were able to get a keen look at the pageant. I know there have been some discussions surrounding why it wasn't live streamed, and of course you have to look at the numbers and the production and the cost that went into it. And I would want to say that ticket sales actually moved within the last hour or two of the event in terms of we had a sold out VIP, but the regular tickets literally started moving a few hours before the show, and it clearly was an indication that persons had an appetite for viewing at home, but when they realized that, listen, we need to be out there supporting the women, they all decided that they were coming out to purchase tickets. And just for the viewing public, I am quite concerned about our diaspora community, and I have received calls from persons in the diaspora regarding the viewing of the pageant. This weekend, we will have the broadcast of Miss SVG, tighter production in terms of the packaging of the show, and the content and everything will be streamed live this weekend by the CDC and in collaboration with VC3. I want to also congratulate the Independence Committee for staging a number of activities in partnership with other stakeholders, the National Dance Festival, the Hairuna Formosa Festival, the Lions Club, South National Secondary Schools Public Speaking Competition, of course, the Miss SVG Royal Return, which I just mentioned, the Madongo Festival, returned after 2 years, Soca Chronicles, which also had their event yesterday, last evening, Vinci Expo, which was another quality production spearheaded by Invest SVG. All of the sponsors and corporate sponsors and persons would have partnered with all of the stakeholders in the activities surrounding the Independence Month of activities. I want to say thank you, and we certainly had a well-packaged month of activities to celebrate our 43rd anniversary of independence. I also want to commend all of the diaspora committees. They hosted activities in the United Kingdom, Canada, in the United States, particularly New York and Toronto. And I think the highlight of the activities in the diaspora was the lighting of the Empire State Building, an iconic building in New York, of course. And I want to single out Consul General, newly appointed Consul General Randy McIntosh and his team, who really did an excellent job in delivering that. Perhaps the force in the Eastern Caribbean. I know some other countries may have done it, but it was really an impressive sight to see the colors of St. Vincent and the Grenadines being displayed at the Empire State Building in New York. So it's a all-round a well-coordinated effort, both locally and in the diaspora, and I want to thank all of the organizers who were involved. We wish to congratulate as well Sherts James on his appointment as cultural ambassador. We have our newest cultural ambassador, which came in the same year he won the Miami Carnival Road Match jointly with Gamal Skinny Fabulous Doyle. It is in no way a correlation, but all of the years of his hard work certainly hasn't gone unnoticed, and for the Cabinet and the Government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to recognize our newest cultural ambassador, Shert's Problem Child James, for his contribution to the art form and the culture and spreading the name of St. Vincent and the flag of St. Vincent and the Grenadines globally within the entertainment space. So we've had quite an interesting period where culture is concerned. We are hoping that we can see some advanced plans for next year's Miss SUG pageant. And I want to put the call out informally. The head of the Beauty Shows Committee is here. I singled her out for her contribution and her hard work. But the invitation is, I would say, open, as we have to start identifying a new crop of young ladies who will exhibit the same level of quality, class, and exuberance as all of the ladies who participated in this year's pageant. And no doubt it is going to be an interesting reign for the current Miss SSG as she embark on her endeavors on national duty as Miss SSG 2022. We're on to tourism, and I think partly why we're here. We will go into the tourism month of activities. Later you will hear from Jolene the outline of some of the activities for this year's tourism month of activities, which begins tomorrow with a church service at the Calico Anglican Church. We are extending an invitation to all stakeholders to participate in all of the scheduled activities, but I think tomorrow's opening will be a very important one, following which we will have a meet and greet at Hotel Alexandrina. So we're extending a formal invitation to all stakeholders within the industry to join with us tomorrow, and as we celebrate the month of activities going into the tourism season. This season, where cruise tourism is concerned, we have removed cruise protocols which were introduced last season as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we will see this year is a free flow of persons disembarking and traveling across St. Vincent and the Grenadines to participate and enjoy in our culture, gastronomy, sites, and to really take in what the beauty and splendor of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This season, we are expecting roughly 305 scheduled calls to our destination, 12 of which are inaugural calls. We are expecting a passenger count of roughly 320, just below 326,000 passengers. This is well over 250,000 passengers this year. And from my checks, it will appear that it will be a record year in terms of our numbers of passenger arrivals for cruise in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I asked my team at the ministry, I said, look, I don't want to see a comparative analysis to last year's numbers, as we are now coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Take us back to pre-pandemic numbers and let us see how we are looking in terms of where we are in the context of our pre-pandemic numbers. So what that says to us is that it represents a 29% increase in cruise calls from our pre-pandemic numbers. Our benchmark year 2018-2019, we're now at 29% more calls than we had during before the pandemic, and we have a 44% increase in cruise passenger arrivals in terms of our projections from a benchmark year 2018-2019. It is, by all of the indications, a pretty good showing in terms of the work that we had put in, even in the cruise in the pandemic period. Even myself, I got intimately involved with the discussions with the cruise lines, the government relations personnel to ensure that St. Vincent and the Grenadines remained a favorable destination, even despite the COVID-19 pandemic and the explosive eruption of our Lasso-Frey volcano. So these figures projected for 2022-2023 will take us slightly above our pre-pandemic numbers, as I indicated, and it will likely to be our best performing year perhaps in the last 20 years where cruise is concerned. So it's really an impressive showing from all of the stakeholders involved, the Ministry of Tourism, the staff at the Tourism Authority, the Port Authority, and all of the agents who continuously negotiate and meet and at conferences and in dialogue with all of the cruise lines to ensure that we get our quota and sufficient number of cruise calls to the destination. I want to say that despite these numbers, we could have even had a lot more calls to the destination. One of the challenges we had is the limitations we have at our cruise terminal. We are unable to dock 3 and 4 vessels per day. In fact, there are some vessels which some cruise lines wanted to come into St. Vincent and the Grenadines at a particular time. But because that slot was already booked and given to another cruise line, it became challenging for us to accommodate a number of cruise lines who would want to come on the same day in terms of the scheduled calls. It's a bit more convenient to have a bigger terminal that can accommodate 3 or 4 or 5 vessels at the same time. And we're quite pleased that the construction of the cargo terminal has started for the west of Kingston, which is going to free up a lot of space within the east of Kingston and the central Kingston, where we have the harbor, to facilitate the expansion of our cruise terminal. And in fact, during a recent visit to the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association conference, a number of the port itinerary managers for the cruise lines were quite excited to hear that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is looking to expand their cruise terminal by having the space freed up to accommodate that expansion, because it is a destination that a lot of the cruise lines and passengers want to visit, and they're quite pleased with our efforts to facilitate more cruise calls to the destination. So while we may be seeing a record year, which we all worked closely with the cruise lines to ensure that we have coming out of the pandemic period and the volcano, a record year in terms of the number of arrivals, in terms of passengers, we're up 44%, and in terms of the cruise calls, we're up 29%. We could have literally had more cruise lines come in, but our capacity to accommodate them remains a challenge. And I just want to indicate that, so when there are persons who may be objecting to the financing of a new port in Kingston, please understand that the expansion of Kingston as a city in terms of our harbor, both our cruise and our cargo ports, cannot accommodate the load and the capacity that we need to see to have more robust commercial activity and more activity as it relates to cruise calls. So that remains a challenge. So when you see other islands are clocking 500,000 or 1 million visitors by cruise in terms of the passenger arrivals, when you do the comparative analysis, just know that we have the potential to get to those numbers, but we need to have bigger infrastructure facilities to accommodate passengers and cruise lines to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I did indicate back in the budget of 2020, when on the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, that it will take roughly about 2 to 3 years to see some level of recovery to pre-pandemic numbers. And in fact, the projections are showing that we are rapidly ahead in terms of our recovery efforts in tourism, and we are recovering faster than anticipated and predicted, particularly where cruise tourism is concerned. So I want to again express my gratitude to all of the hardworking staff in the Ministry of Tourism, the Cruise Tourism Task Force, which comprises members not just of the Ministry of Tourism, but also police, the immigration, customs, the Coast Guard, stakeholders, agents, taxi operators, all of these stakeholders. They do have a seat at the table in terms of our discussions to negotiate how we navigate our way out of the COVID pandemic and the eruption of the Las River volcano. So again, a commendable effort by all of the stakeholders involved. We will see a record year for cruise in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 2022-2023, and I'm looking forward to that. Those projections, which we're hoping will stay, because there are cancellations, there may be things that may occur, but so far we're looking to see a record year for cruise. In just 1 year after the recovery from our volcano, eruption of our Las River, and just 2 years off from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think it's a commendable effort from all of the persons and stakeholders involved. I would want to, at this point, invite stakeholders to address us on a number of the updates and changes to operations in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or in Kingston primarily, as it relates to cruise, an update on the registered amount of agents, taxi operators, and licensed partners, as well as the any changes or significant changes in our traffic as it relates to the cruise season. We have our first call to the destination, I believe, commencing on the 2nd. It's a smaller vessel which will come into Port Kingston, but I believe the Britannia on Thursday the 3rd will be our first large vessel coming in, Piano Cruises, with a capacity of 3,647 passengers. So we're likely to see on Thursday of this week over 3,000 visitors disembarking and swamping us in Kingston. So of course the traffic, the concerns and pedestrian crossing is going to be one of the things, particularly traffic with taxi operating and parking is something which we ought to have available to the general public. At this point, I will allow Jolene to facilitate the discussions with the other partners who are at the head table with us.
Okay, thank you, Minister. And now we'll allow our Quality Assurance Manager, Mrs. Natalie Shaw, to just give us an update in terms of registration process. She'll give us an update in terms of the standards and compliance. Natalie, over to you.
As Ms. Scott had said, my name is Natalie James Short. I'm responsible at the Tourism Authority for licensing of our 5 stakeholder groupings. That includes accommodation, taxis, tour operator, short-term vehicle rentals, and tour guides. All our current licensed stakeholders, their license actually expires today. Our licensing period run from the 1st of November to the 31st of October annually. So we have where anybody within these 5 stakeholder grouping have a business that they're operating, it needs to be tourism approved. And what this means is that the standard that governs and the code of practice that governs these 5 stakeholder groupings, having been gazetted on October the 20th, 2014, means that you as a stakeholder would come into the Tourism Authority and register your business. So as we have our exciting cruise season starting this week and the licensing period starts tomorrow, I will use a taxi as an example. As a taxi operator, you want to work within the cruise season, you want to work with the hotels, you want to work at the airport. You would come into the Tourism Authority, or you can even ask us to email you that application form and you would register your business. With that registration, we ask for your vehicle registration. We ask for your driver's license. For new operators, we ask for police record and a valid first aid and CPR certificates. Once you have done all of this process, the next step would be training. The Tourism Authority is responsible for training of our stakeholder groups as well. So as a taxi operator, you would undergo training in customer service, tourism education, and if you do not have a valid first aid or CPR certificates, then we would engage the Red Cross in training you to have that valid certificate. The next step would be submitting the necessary information. Once you have done the training, passed the assessment, you would then be submitted to a board of directors for approval. Once you're approved, we have where you have your license will be granted to you. This year, we have where I can show you, this is the color. We use a different color every year because, as we said, the license expires. So this would be the color for 2022, 2023. So as a general public, if you see a taxi with this beautiful color, you would know that this person is a valid taxi operator. You're also going to see the tour operators, and I bring along this morning the cruise season tour bus pass. So you'll see the tour buses have this as well, this big one. And every year, as I said, we change the colors. Due to the fallout during the pandemic, we currently have over 450 registered taxi operators. Of this number, 265 we have that are licensed with us. When I said licensed, I'm going to use myself as an example. I have a driver's license, but if when my birthday comes around, I do not pay that license, I do not have a valid driver's license. I am a licensed I have a driver's license, but it's not valid if I let it expire after my birthday comes around. Same thing with our license. If you do not pay your license on the 31st of October, you are registered with us, but you're not currently a licensed stakeholder. So we are asking, especially the taxi operators, it's a very exciting season. As the minister would have mentioned, we have lots of calls. For those persons who did not relicense, when I say relicense, did not come in the last 2 years, be inspected, be licensed, your Red Cross certificates would have expired. We're encouraging you, there's one session tomorrow, we're encouraging you to go and get your Red Cross certificates up to date and still come and get your license to operate for the 2022-23 season. Because you're going to find, as the minister mentioned, we have the cooperation of the police. They're licensed taxi operators who you would see working at the cruise terminal. But if you do not have this color, you would not be permitted to work at the cruise terminal. Even persons, well, the taxi association, both association have their members that work, and you can feel free to contact them as well to know the necessary details to come forward and be relicensed with us. We have our hoteliers, we have our tour guides, our tour operators. The same thing, everybody license expired today. So from tomorrow, we do have where our tour operators who work the cruise ships, our tour guides, again, who work the cruise ship, would want to work this season, just visit the tourism authority and have those necessary license. You bring the updated documents to us and be relicensed for this season.
If you want to know if a country is lawless, to look at these streets and how the traffic is flowing and how persons conduct themselves on the road. So in saying that, we realize that our road network doesn't have the capacity to facilitate a lot of traffic flow. So we realize that we're going to have to use our traffic officers to regulate the traffic within the streets of Kingstown, just to ensure that there's a smooth flow of traffic around Kingstown. In particular, at the cruise ship terminal, we've identified certain points where we realize that there is usually a backup of traffic, especially when you're leaving the terminal. Right? So at those points, we're going to strategically place officers at those points to ensure that there's a smooth flow of traffic. There has not been much traffic change in terms of how the traffic would flow, because as I mentioned before, we do not have the road network to facilitate that traffic changing around Kingston. So there would be officers placed outside of the cruise ship terminal. I don't know how many persons have traversed that area, but if you notice, we would have done some assessment in the area, walk along with Tourism Authority, and would have placed 2 pedestrian crossings just in the area of the custom gate, right? That is to facilitate pedestrians who are using the area, and we've done some assessment where we've seen persons utilizing those pedestrian crossings, which is a plus, right? We know that we're gonna have to place an officer there, because at the same time, while we want our visitors to use the crossing safely, we want to also ensure that there's a smooth flow of traffic and that there's not much inconvenience and delay and loss of time and resources in terms of our visitors being here. We have also looked at a relief system. This is usually being done when the tourist season is upon us, where we would activate our relief system, where there will always be a presence of a police officer. So it wouldn't just be for the tourist season, but we're heading into the busy Christmas season, where officer will always be present at the cruise ship terminal for the duration of the time when the cruise ship is in port. So they will be relieving each other at those points, just to ensure that law and order is being maintained on the streets and safety is being upheld on the streets of St. Vincent and Grenadines. Outside of the cruise ship terminal, we would have also placed some no parking signs just outside of that molasses, where the molasses tank is there. Before we would have allowed taxi drivers to park on the no parking signs. But as I mentioned before, because we're trying to create a safe space for pedestrians and for motorists, we're asking taxi drivers to desist and to please comply with the no parking sign in the area there. We would cone off in front of the NIS building, which is usually being done every year, and that is to facilitate taxi operators to queue up one behind the other in front of the NIS building until they're ready to make their turnover from inside the terminal to outside. There's the area outside of inside the molasses tank there, where private vehicles usually park. Private vehicles will not be allowed to park in that area. That area is to facilitate the taxi operators. They would use that area as a holding area, right? As I mentioned, as they await their turnover from outside to inside. Presently, we have some officers up there doing some more painting today again on the opposite side of where Massey is. And that is also to create a safe space and a safe passage for motorists who are using that area along the cruise ship terminal. So as I mentioned before, we just wanna, and we've worked along with the Tourism Authority in inspecting the taxis. We've done a thorough inspection on all taxis, not just on the mainland, but also on the Grenadines, to ensure that they are in top the roadworthy condition, and at any time we want the taxi drivers to know that because they were inspected and they passed. Once we recognize that there's a defect on that motor vehicle could be called upon any time for inspection, because the last thing we want is any serious casualty on our roads because a vehicle has a fault or has a defect. And so we want to send a message to the taxi operators, and they have a responsibility also to check their motor vehicles to ensure that their motor vehicles are in good shape while they take the visitors to and from their destination. Right, so that is just my update in respect of how we're gonna deal with the traffic in the area heading into the tourist season. Thank you.
I just want to add to the conversation surrounding the stickers for the licensing of the taxi operators. And this is in no way to prejudice other taxi operators who may not have applied for their license for this season. But I just want to indicate if you're a taxi operator, you are familiar with what the requirements are. In fact, the training that is provided in terms of the emergency response, CPR, in relation to the training in relation to the information surrounding sites and on the updates to those information are very critical to the industry in terms of standards. And you want to make sure that all of the operators are basically have conformed to the standards that we have set, so that the quality, in fact, very often the stakeholders would be engaged in consultations and discussions with the Tourism Authority and the Cruise Tourism Task Force. But visitors, importantly, very often would commend the taxi operators in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So the quality in terms of their training, their knowledge of the country. And having one of these licenses or the stickers is indicating that you have gone through the recent training, the updates in terms of information, and that you are equipped and ready for the approaching season. So I want to thank the Cruise Tourism Task Force, the Tourism Authority, the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force for all of the work that they've put in terms of preparing us for this season. Just very briefly, permit me to highlight some information as it relates to air, because I know the questions will come, well, we're focusing on cruise tourism, but what about air access to St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Just to announce, just yesterday, we welcomed to our destination for the very first time Virgin Atlantic 7879 Dreamliner, which is one of the larger carriers for Virgin Atlantic. They've changed their planes in terms of their operations in St. Vincent, the Barbados St. Vincent leg, primarily because they're expecting a bumper season in terms of arrivals for the winter period. So we're now having an additional capacity coming from Heathrow to Argyle, and that is something which we will take note of for this winter season. In terms of American Airlines, you would have heard the announcement that we're expecting daily non-stop flights from Miami starting from March 3rd, 2023. Even as we speak, it's sometimes so difficult to get a seat on a flight to and from Miami from Argyle. It shows that leg is picking up in terms of the load factor. And of course, American Airlines being pleased with its performance coming to Argyle International Airport, they have decided to move towards daily non-stop scheduled flights starting from March 3rd, 2023. Air Canada will resume flights weekly from Toronto to this destination as of this Friday. So we're hoping to see our first flight landing here from Toronto. From December the 20th this year, they will move to 3 flights weekly until January the 6th, where they will move to, there'll be Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Flights will be expected out of Toronto to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And from January the 10th, they move back to twice weekly flights on Tuesdays and Fridays until the end of April. So again, we're expecting to see some increased movement and numbers coming out of Toronto. They've added 3 flights weekly commencing the 20th of December, and will revert back to twice weekly after the December period. January the 10th, we'll see Tuesdays and Fridays, but commencing the 20th of December, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays will be added. In terms of our hotels, we can only perform within the capacity in which we and the infrastructure that we have to work with. And very often you will hear, well, what are the numbers coming out of St. Vincent in comparison to another island? And, islands which have had international airports 2 decades ago, major hotel brands a decade and a half, 2 decades ago. They have a well-established market. We've just completed our international airport, 5 years of operation. We now have access to 3 or 4 main source markets, London, Toronto, Miami, and of course JFK, well, 4 of our main source markets. And what we all considered in this process is, even if we were to land 10 787s at Argyle tomorrow, the big question is, where are we going to put all of these arriving passengers and guests to our destination? So of course we've started that robust discussion and engagement with the private investors. Also, the government has also joined in that race to have rapidly the construction of hotels here on mainland St. Vincent to accommodate persons coming to our destination. So of course, a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit some of the sites to get an update as to where we are with our hotel construction. At Royal Mill, we have some 70 workers there who are completing the villas, and will hopefully, by the end of this year, start on the construction of the hotel, the actual hotel for Royal Mill, with a projected capacity of roughly 300 persons. Holiday Inn Express is well on its way. We have about 40 to 50 persons who are employed there. They have completed the foundation stage of the Holiday Inn Express Hotel, and they're now moving to start on the first floor, which is also a commendable move from the contractors, who are rapidly advancing the work to have that hotel delivered to us within a few months. The finishing works are now being carried out at Mayor's Suite, which is a local investor who has decided to add some rooms to the equation. I understand that there are just some minor delays in terms of sourcing particular types of furnishing, but I have to return a visit to that facility to ensure that it is moving at a rapid pace in terms of when we're expecting to have that opened. And of course, Sandals, which is perhaps one of the anticipated hotels that we're looking forward to because of what the brand name and what they bring to mainland St. Vincent. They also rapidly advancing work. We have seen the hiring of a number of local workers in conjunction with the contractors who are from the Dominican Republic, and they're rapidly getting the workload up to have that facility open. And hopefully by 2024, the opening of that first quarter, we can have that facility ready to accommodate Vincentians. The works are pace development. I understand and advise that site is already seeing some improvements in terms of persons are back to work there, and they're looking to complete the finishing on the villas that are located there. But also I want to commend the local hoteliers who have over the years been pioneers, most of them family-run operations, who have really spent a lot of their time developing the hotels, the room stock that we've had in St. Vincent. I know a number of them, they've already started expanding their facilities. But it is at a point in St. Vincent and the Grenadines where we need to see a lot more rooms on mainland. And the projections from myself at the ministry, we're hoping to see roughly about 1,000 rooms being added by 2025, 2026. And all of these hotels which are being constructed now is a race to the finish to see how quickly we can get a number of them up before that projected timeline. Of course, the Marriott, we're hoping to see some works. Hopefully in the new year, we'll see some boots on the ground in terms of the civil works at the Marriott site, because we are also eagerly anticipating the completion of the Marriott Hotel at Mount Twin on mainland. So what we are seeing in context is the emergence of a new era for tourism on mainland. We know the Grenadines is well developed and established, Canouan, Mustique, to some extent Union Island and Beckway, PSV, Palm Island. But on mainland, we've never really had this major drive towards tourism on mainland in terms of the number of hotels we're constructing, the number of record cruise calls we're now seeing at our port in Kingston, the record number of airlines that are coming here from all of our major source markets in under 5 years. And when I want the members of the media to do your analysis as to very early in the period of some of the large islands, when they started their tourism, how quickly they were able to attract airlines from major source markets, how quickly they were able to attract the type of tourism investment and development in comparison to just under 5 years of having in the international airport. What we're seeing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a country that is fastly emerging to becoming an industry leader in terms of our growth, in terms of our projections, in terms of what we're doing in terms of transformation of our tourism product on mainland, particularly in St. Vincent. And I want to thank all of the stakeholders, including the media, who we all have that responsibility and that role to play to ensure that there's a lot of tourism awareness. As we always say, tourism is everyone's business. But I think we need to spend a bit more time in dialogue with the organizations, civic organizations, community groups, to ensure that people understand that tourism is not just in relation to sun, sea, and sand or staying at a hotel. But if you look across the linkages that will be created from the tourism sector, the farmers and the fishers also will have a readily available market for their fresh produce. The taxi operators, the tour guides, gardeners, persons who are skilled in certifications in bartending and hospitality. Even you look at hotel rooms, which someone who has technical skills in air conditioning repair. The demand, if you have 300 rooms and if there's not central cooling, just imagine for every hotel room there has to be a service. A simple thing as a vendor who is or farmer who is in the production of eggs. For every hotel room, if you're adding 1,000 rooms, and let's say on average weekly you have a capacity of 60, 70 room stock, you're talking 600, 700 people. There are some persons who may not eat an egg, but for breakfast you can guarantee you'll either have an egg boiled, an omelette, scrambled, fruits and vegetables, and you're talking about for every room, every day. 500-600 eggs being supplied across the hotel room stocks which we'll have. Now, if you can identify one farmer that produces 500 eggs per day in St. Vincent, and I'm just giving you the magnitude of what is to come in terms of the production that is required to support the tourism, the emerging tourism industry and the transformation that we're likely to see in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our transportation system, you will have workers working up until midnight, 1 o'clock. Guests at hotels would want to go into communities to take part in community festivals and activities and events. So even taxi operation and our public transportation system, by 8 o'clock on some nights you can find a van to go into Glen or to go to North Leeward. And the point they're making is that all this will change. We will need to have more transportation on the road. We will need to have more enhanced and robust public transportation system. Our nightlife would naturally change to accommodate the requirements that are needed in the industry. And all of these things, more or less, they are the linkage that will be created and the revenue that will be generated from a more robust tourism activity on mainland. And we're hoping that once we have all of these hotels up, we can see St. Vincent being more competitive, St. Vincent and the Grenadines being a more packaged destination where we can really do some significant marketing of the destination as an industry leader. Because everyone knows that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a beautiful Caribbean island where you can come to visit and get 32 different experiences in our 32 island and keys. So I want to end on that note, but to just to indicate that, despite all of the challenges we've had from the volcano, the eruption of the Lassa Fray and COVID-19, we have hit the ground running, we put in the work, and now we are at a stage where we have airlines are coming here daily as of next year, 3 times a week as of from December. These are the type of changes we're likely to see there. And of course, in cruise, we are likely to see a record year for cruise. The best numbers we're projected to see in the last 20 years of cruise here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as I said, we could have accommodated more, but it's within our limitations and what we have to work with. We have to accept these numbers for what they are, and hopefully we can see in the not too distant future a brand new terminal which facilitating duty-free shops and different elements of our creative space that can be accommodated, or creative arts that can be accommodated in a new cruise terminal here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So it's a record year for us, projected to be, and we're hoping that all of these stakeholders will benefit, because I would not be here as Minister of Tourism if I'm speaking to you, members of the media. And I've always said this, my main objective is to ensure that there's a trickle-down effect, that all of the stakeholders within the industry, they're able to benefit and they're able to put food on their tables at the end of the day. And this is the most significant part of my job as Minister of Tourism in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. At this point, I think that sums up what the information on our tourism product for the upcoming season. And just to indicate to stakeholders, before, traditionally you would have received a copy of the cruise schedule calls by way of a basic printout of an Excel of the cruise calls and so on and the information. But this year we have moved towards, and this is a draft of what will be printed. It's a blob of it, but we'll have a pretty packaged booklet in terms of the cruise itinerary for the November 2022 to May 2023 season. St. Vincent and the Grenadines itinerary. It is something that is different. It will be packed with information about St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There's a message from the minister, of course, and indicating fast facts about the island for those visiting passengers and for also the stakeholders who are interacting with visitors. It gives an idea of some of the sites to visit in St. Vincent, providing, of course, information on our inaugural calls, the 12 of them, and of course it goes into the cruise call schedule for 2022-2023, which is quite a few pages. And at the back of the calls, we have also information on some of our sites here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Daffy Fall, of course, not because it is in North Leeward, which is my constituency, is first, but the Botanic Gardens, oldest in the Western Hemisphere, Black Point Tunnel. So just some basic information on some of the sites. The Oria Salt Pan, the Vermont Nature Trail, Fort Charlotte, and so on. Beaches, gives you black sand beaches, history of why the beaches are black, on beaches on the leeward coast and on the windward coast, of course, the east coast. Beaches in the Grenadines, it gives you an idea of where to go and what to participate in. 32 must-do things in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So all of the information that is provided here, and of course the cover page, the back page will see a feature of the Tobago Keys and of course the scheduled cruise lines that are expected to visit St. Vincent and the Grenadines this season. And this information is really for a number of our guests who they may decide to book one cruise and then they love the country so much, but the limited time that they spend and they look at the back of the itinerary and realize that, well, they didn't get to see Vermont Nature Trail, or they didn't get to go to Palm Island or the Tobago Keys or Beckwith, and they may want to come back on another cruise. So there's a list and an itinerary of all of the cruise, the schedule calls for the period, and this will go into print, I believe, from today, so we can have it made available to our taxi operators and stakeholders within the industry. So that's in addition to what we're doing in tourism. And I want to again thank everyone for their support as we build capacity and we transform our tourism product here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For historians, all Vincentians who are very accomplished in their own right and who have spent a number of years in the field to work on putting together a document which we will tell our own story, and in our own, we will provide a narrative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and coming from our own story, and not from what we would have read from previous journal entries from ship captains or former governors, but a narrative which is well researched, fact-checked, and put into context the growth in our economy, our culture, our way of life as a Vincentian over the years. And we have had the opportunity to, and the fortunate opportunity to have 4 accomplished Vincentians who have worked on this, the production of the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Today I'm pleased to announce that they have completed the first 3 chapters of this first draft. There's an outstanding chapter, I believe, to be completed, but yes, and the first 3 of the drafts will be handed over here today. But I want to welcome Dr. Denny, who will invite you to say a bit on what your journey has been with your partners in relation to putting together this journal, chronicling this journal of our history. And of course, we will have the handover of the drafts in which the Director of Culture, Maxine Brung, will participate in that. But we'll invite you to share a few words as to synopsis of briefly what the draft is.
Protocol expertise I am clearly deficient in, but I beg for all the apologies necessary. But I'm happy to be here. And I am also happy to have my colleague with me, Dr. Thomas. We are missing Dr. Scott, he's in Barbados. And we're also missing Dr. Fraser, who's, he has some appointment which he could not escape. And I know that both of them would have been very, very happy to be here, and so on. We have worked massively, I would say, over months and months and months of reading, writing, revising, researching, and so on. And when you have four persons working together, each of us is an independent intellectual, in our own right. And as to be able to work together didn't mean having to develop, a kind of rhythm, a set of understandings, by which we, are able to transform ourselves from, single individuals into a working collective. And we have managed to do that very, very well. In part, what we did in these 3 chapters and across all chapters, we shared responsibility for each chapter to a primary author. You write the first draft, okay, so that at least we have something to work with. But then, where the real work began is that we would all sit and read each and every single line of every single chapter together, making changes as we so determined. And in fact, Thomas in particular did an extraordinary amount of reading as we went through the discussion of this work. Okay, so what do we have here? And I would read to you this one page, since this captures what I would want you to know. And of course, I'm free to answer any questions if you do have questions to ask. But to the ministry we say that we, the historians listed below, are pleased to offer to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines the first 3 chapters of the government-commissioned history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have developed a plan to write this work in 2 volumes. We have divided volume 1 into 3 sections, each of which has multiple chapters. The first section is entitled The Rise and Fall of Indigenous Civilizations in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The second section is entitled Slave Plantations and the Colonial State. Section 3 is entitled Fighting Back, Proto-Nationalism in the Colonial State. Chapters 1 and 2 tell the story of the rise and fall of indigenous civilizations here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Chapter 1 focuses on the history of the human presence in St. Vincent and the Grenadines before the arrival of the Europeans in the Caribbean. In fact, the first human being to set foot on this land did so 5,000 years ago. And it seems to me that that Vincentians need to have a certain kind of astonishment that we live on a land where human beings have been walking for 5,000 years. And that kind of recognition, that kind of cognition is not always with us. And this book sets out to give us that sense of wonder that comes with this kind of history. Chapter 2 traces the ways in which these indigenous Vincentians who developed the first civilization here in St. Vincent resisted European conquest up to 1797. In fact, the truly astonishing aspect about the indigenous resistance in St. Vincent is that resistance to European presence lasted in St. Vincent longer than anywhere else in the Caribbean. This was a 300-year fight. When we fell in 1797, it's because that battle had begun way back in the 1400s. Vincentians left St. Vincent in canoes, went to Puerto Rico to fight the Spaniards in Puerto Rico in the 1500s. And we were fighting the British here in 1797. It was a 300 years battle that Vincentians have been engaged upon. It's a history that has not really been told. And that kind of conception of Vincentians being in some ways the progenitors of a pan-Caribbean consciousness, that we could recognize ourselves within the broader Caribbean and could act in that fashion 300 years ago. That is a story in which there's complete silence. This text brings that story alive. Now, chapter 3 tells the story of plantation slavery in St. Vincent and the Grenadines between 1797 and 1834. It demonstrates that enslaved Vincentians generated enormous wealth for the slave plantation owners through the brutal exploitation of their labor power. Taken together, these chapters tell an astonishing story of St. Vincent and the Grenadines' transformation from paradise to purgatory, the native genocide and slavery in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Vincentian story is virtually unique within the Caribbean because these two processes of genocide and slavery occurred almost simultaneously in this same space. Virtually nowhere else in the Caribbean was the genocide immediately followed by the imposition of a slave society. Our first 3 chapters capture this terrible transformation and can stand on their own as a powerful story of the Vincentian past that must be told. Our 4th chapter will be completed shortly, and we anticipate that we can accelerate the research and the writing process to complete Volume 1. But we do wish to note that the first 3 chapters and the 4th, which we'll give to you within 3 weeks or so, detail a story of the Vincentian historical experience that can be found no place else. It will undoubtedly be the cornerstone text of all future histories of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the government should be justly pleased at the process which has yielded these key writings on the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would ask my colleague to say a few words.
I would just like to say, on behalf of the group, the team, we would like to commend the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines for implementing this project. And you've got a good overview from my colleague, Michael Denny, what it's all about. As there are 4 of us on this team, and we would also like to say thank you very much for selecting us. It's a real honor to be involved in this project. And when we started, at least when I started, I never realized there was so much work involved. This is a very time-consuming project because we are going through a mass of materials we never knew existed. And this is taking a lot of time. So what we are coming out with is something unique, as my colleague just said. So far, I think we have drafted about 400 pages. And you're going to get quite a few today. But it's a lot of work, and we're all dedicated. And one good thing that is coming out from this exercise, all 4 of us are on the same page, as we would say. So ideologically, we know where we're coming from. And this is not a political ideology. It's a different kind of sort of thing. This is about historians who are digging real deep into our past and coming up with something that we've never heard or seen before. So we promise you look forward to great things from us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, historians. And now we'll invite our cultural officer, Maxine Brown, to receive our draft, our first volume. So, Maxine.
Thank you very much.
You can, yes.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll allow our reigning queen Miss Jada Ross, just to give us some brief remarks. Once again, congratulations on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture. Welcome, Ms. Ross.
Good morning, everyone, viewers and members of the media, and everyone that is a part of this morning's conference. I don't have anything much to say more than I am looking forward to the 2022-2023 cruise season that is approaching. I am quite honored to be a part of the tourism celebrations, anything that we're going to be taking part of in this season, and I am willing to assist in any way I can. Thank you. Also, thank you to the Beauty Shows Committee, the Caribbean Development Corporation, and everyone that's played a part in my crowning and just any opportunities that I would have throughout this process.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ross, and do enjoy your reign. Let's welcome our chairperson for the Carnival Development Corporation Beauty Show, Avia Charles.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us this morning at the press conference. First, I want to thank all persons who are involved in making Saturday's event a success, and also to the patrons of Ascension's, even visitors who attended the event on Saturday. It was truly an overwhelming experience in terms of the attendance. I believe that it was one of, in the most recent years, it was one of the most well-attended shows in terms of patrons, and we do look forward, or the committee looks forward to continue building on the Miss SVG brand and improving where we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Charles. At this moment, we allow for questions from our media. Any questions?
Yes, good morning. My name is Claire Kieser from Searchlight Newspaper. My question is for Mrs. Shaw. Given that the licenses for the stakeholder groups, given that they expire today and the cruise season begins on Wednesday, what percentage of tour guides, taxi operators, tour operators, etc., would you say have already renewed their licenses for the 2022-23 year, and how long does the relicensing process take?
The relicensing process takes place within a 2-month period, and that is for everybody. But in dealing with the taxis, we start the inspection for relicensing in September, and with the cooperation of the police, we run this session for 3 weeks, Monday to Friday. During that 3-week period, we would inspect the taxis, the tour buses, and then we submit those names for relicensing. So I am happy to say that of those 265 or so that we had currently licensed for the 2021-22 period, I can happily say that we have those 100% persons. The taxi drivers, yes. What I was speaking about earlier is that we have over 450 registered taxi operators, and some of them would not have renewed their license due to the last 2 seasons when we had the pandemic, and the height of the pandemic, when we had persons, we were asking persons to be vaccinated because of the protocols that the cruise ships had put in place, and we wanted to ensure that only the vaccinated taxi operators. Now that the protocols no longer exist and just recommendations that we're working with, that's where we have a lot of those taxi operators now are coming in to be relicensed. But to be relicensed, we started this in August, where you had to update your CPR. So that CPR and first aid, that started in August because we anticipated that we were going to have an open season. So we were gladly welcoming those persons to come back and update their license. Once we relicense them, their license have been printed. So that process for the taxis, I'm happy to say those current licensed one, we can say that they were 100%. We have tomorrow that we have the Red Cross, that some persons who were not vaccinated and wants to be relicensed, they are going to be updating their Red Cross certificates tomorrow. Once that is done, then I submit their names to be relicensed based also on the cooperation of the police. Now that the 3-week period has finished, the police garage is cooperating with us where, say I was not vaccinated and I want to work, they would come, let us know that they update their certificate, and we'll send them out to the police garage for their vehicles to be inspected, to be in line with the tourism standards that they all know. Because once the training, they would have learned this, they would have purchased this standard to know exactly what's required of them. So that process is a little quicker compared to when we started in August to have them relicensed.
Right. In relation to the question posed to me, we will have the cruise itinerary, the booklet form, available soft copy as well, so available on the internet. Anyone can, it will be free and accessible to anyone. As soon as we're able to get it back from the printers, we'll have it out to the general public as well.
Okay, you have just handed over the draft of the first 3 chapters of the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in your remarks you said a 4th chapter is almost finished. You said the first volume is divided into 3 sections.
That is correct.
But you didn't say how many chapters will be part of this volume 1, nor did you mention how many chapters we can look forward to in volume 2.
We should have 7 chapters in volume 1, and an introduction and a conclusion. So altogether, that would be 9 different segments of writing. But the chapter 4 is almost finished. So chapters 5, 6, and 7, in the process of lots of research done, but we haven't, put them together yet. We probably have about 8 different chapters in volume 2. We have already plotted out the entire. There's always room to make changes here and there because the process of thinking and writing does permit changes. But broadly speaking, you're looking at 7 chapters in volume 1, and chapter 4. We could probably finish it in 2 weeks, and I imagine we will.
But I also want to ensure that we have a very clean tongue, not just for visitors, but also for our locals. We are working closely with other stakeholders. National Parks, I know, for instance, has been working to ensure that a lot of the beaches are kept clean. We've just completed in Villa the facility which will have change rooms, amenities, an area for lounge and food and so on at Villa. We have one similar at Indian Bay and Brighton. We have spent collectively over $1 million to build out a number of these facilities across the country. And we're hoping by this coming year, when we have our estimates laid, provisions in place to at least have some lifeguards to be placed at some of the more active beaches in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is also something that we're looking as an addition. But we want to see how best we can improve the quality and the standard of our sites. What a lot of people didn't realize, even during the eruption of the Lasso Free, at some of our sites on the northwest and the northeast coasts, we incurred loss of to the tune of over 1 million EC dollars at some of the sites. Darkview Fall, which I understand is now accessible, and had you gone there during the eruption of the last frame, you would not have recognized that place. And the work that National Parks and Beaches and Rivers Authority put into some of these sites to bring them back to the where they are now. And of course, continued and further development and works are expected. But we would have allocated over $1 million to clean up some of these sites, and also spent an additional $1 million to add and enhance sites on the popular sites as well, Brighton, Indian Bay, Villa, and a number of other areas. But we're hoping to see some of these. But we have to keep St. Vincent and the Grenadines clean, not just for visitors, but for all of us. And we exist here, it's our island, and we have to ensure that it is a clean and safe place for us to dwell and to welcome visitors.
I have two questions. As one of them, sorry for the lateness, so I didn't get much of the minister said in his presentation. But I have a question pertaining to an event that is taking place on the 5th of November. It's Miss Big and Beautiful International Show. I have seen contestants from all over Africa, Asia, and in the region. I have not seen anything from the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, and I think that's a big event. I don't know if the Ministry is involved, because at the end of the day, it's St. Vincent and Grenadines. If anything goes wrong, it's St. Vincent. So I just want to tell if the Ministry have any involvement in it. The CDC or the British Youth.
I might have seen some correspondence very early from one of the local organizers as it relates to that particular pageant. I'll have to get some further update as to where we are with that to see whether or not there is any representation or lack thereof, or if there was any support given in relation to that. But I take the point that, every opportunity it is to have ambassadors in the cultural space represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines is something that we should all look forward to.
Next question. The maternity show that took place on the weekend, Saturday, there wasn't any live streaming of the event, and it was posted in the diaspora. And I know personally that person have contributed to the pageant, to contestants, and they were real annoyed and upset at the situation. Is there any particular explanation why the event was streamed?
Well, I addressed it very early, and I know you didn't indicate. But one of the things I indicated that, the production of the show is one of the considerations I believe that the Carnival Development Corporation took into consideration. I indicated that within the last hour or two of the event, that is when most of the ticket sales actually moved, when people realized, well, look, we have to be in the park to support the contestants. In fact, that is when the information that came to me, when the members of the CDC went around to pick up the tickets, which were not moving as fast as they had anticipated, the vendors who were selling said, no, well, you need to leave the tickets now because people are now literally coming for the tickets. And in that last hour or two is when a lot of the general tickets were sold. The VIP, of course, was sold out long before. So they had an idea of what the capacity was going to be for the VIP. But the general admission tickets really moved in the last hour or two of the event. I did indicate that we will have a packaged production of the event, which will be broadcast this coming weekend for those particularly in the diaspora. In fact, I would be looking forward to that production, because even while at the show, I was busy keeping an eye on what the developments that were taking place backstage and in the different segments and areas of the activity. So I myself, and I am quite certain the Miss SG and all of her sisters would want to see, when I say sisters, I'm referring to the contestants who participated, will also want to see their effort, because they also didn't get the opportunity to really take in the backstage chaos. Might have not had an appreciation of how the actual show went. So we're looking forward with great anticipation this weekend, the streaming of Miss SOG to patrons in the diaspora and those who are here in St. Vincent who were unable to attend the event. But
You mentioned that it within the last hour the ticket sales picked up. So let's say the ticket sales didn't pick up. You missed an opportunity to make some extra funds. Let's say they were streaming it pay-per-view.
well, from the CDC would really want to really answer that based on their experience handling pay-per-views in the past and live streaming and that sort of thing. I mean, they would have had their experiences even as recent as the Soca Monarch and the shows for Vincy Mass. So I think they're best placed to answer the question based on their technical, their capacity, production, and the potential for revenue and loss of revenue within that context.
Minister, I actually did me personally. I took offense that the CDC would broadcast 30 minutes of breakdown. And at the end of the broadcast, you put up on the screen that if you want to be the show, come down to Annie's. It's not everybody come down to Annie's Vale. If you're not streaming, they just leave it alone.
Yes.
And not even an explanation, not even a press release to say, we're not streaming the show because all then before the show, there was a question on the Vincy screen. Should we stream the show or not? And most people said yes. So not even an explanation, a press release to say that we're not streaming this and the reason why we're not streaming this.
So I'm quite certain now that I've asked the city to have and which they were considering to have a screening of the event this week, and I'm quite certain you'll be looking forward to it. Yeah.
I will look at it, but everybody
Yes,
wants
yes,
to see, and
yes.
I don't know when. So I go to look at the ball, Ms. Ross win, so
Yeah, the production, I am quite certain the production will be tighter and it will be a bit sharper in terms of the viewing online and so on. So it's a good opportunity to look forward to. Yes. All right. Any more questions? Sorry. All right. At this point, we will get an idea of the information surrounding the calendar of activities for Tourism Month, and I will allow Jolene Scott to give an outline as to the program for the month of activities starting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Minister, and thank you to the media who have asked their questions. I will now turn our attention to Tourism Month. Tourism Month is an opportunity for us to celebrate tourism, not only in St. Vincent, but across the Caribbean. Every year, we will join our counterparts in the region to celebrate tourism. The idea of Tourism Month is basically to raise awareness and to further encourage persons to get involved in tourism, to know their role and understand that, like our tagline says, tourism is everyone's business. We have to live it, love it, and embrace it. And even from Minister's presentation today, you would have noticed that he emphasized the importance for us to work together. Every single one of us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a role to play in tourism. And our activities are basically surrounding different target groups, different stakeholders. So I'll just give you an idea of some of the activities. So as Minister mentioned a while ago, we have our Thanksgiving service that is scheduled for tomorrow. It starts at 9:30 at the Caliacua Anglican Church. And after that, we will have a meet and greet where we encourage stakeholders to come out and network. Our minister will be there, our different officers would be there, different stakeholders leading stakeholders, they would also be there for you to network, to talk more about tourism. It's just an informal session for you to get to know who are those leading persons within the industry. After that, on the 4th of November, we would have our Vincy Tourism Day competition. This Vincy Tourism Day competition is basically to expose persons within the destination to just two types of tourism. Last time when we had the competition, we focused on two niche. We focused on marine tourism, no, festival tourism and ecotourism. This year we will focus on marine tourism and festival tourism. This is where ministries and schools, they would utilize a space and display different elements of marine tourism. They'll also display different elements of festival tourism. And you may ask, why are we pushing this festival tourism? We're pushing this festival of Vinci Tourism Day competition because we want persons to get to know their destination. It's interesting that you'll find out that not many persons would read about their destination, but this is just an activity to allow persons to become more aware of the destination, to do research, you know, to get to know St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And of course, we can't do as many types of tourism, so this year we will just focus on marine tourism and festival tourism. Already we have about 12 schools participating. We have several ministries showing interest. And for persons who might wonder, how can I participate? There's a registration form. You can contact the ministry and we would be glad to send you that registration, right? We have on the 8th of November a Tourism Youth Career Symposium. This Tourism Career Youth Symposium is an opportunity for students to become more aware of the different career opportunities within the tourism and hospitality industry, right? And we have experts on the panel. We'll be having the general manager from Palm Island and the assistant manager. We will be having our quality development manager from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Tourism Authority. We'll have our director of national parks. We'll also have Rodney Small. He will look at the elements of entertainment and culture. And there are other persons. And of course, it's an opportunity for them to network, get to know, you know, who are the leading stakeholders, and not only the leading stakeholders, but get to talk to these stakeholders, ask them questions, ask them how did they get to where they are, what are some of the things that we can do to get to where you are, right? So that's our Tourism Career Symposium. And on the 11th of November, we have our media tour. And this is where we're inviting all our media personnel to get on board. I believe you would have already been invited. An invitation would have been sent to the media for you to participate in this media tour. I'm seeing some familiar faces, so I know that you're quite aware what our media tour is like. In years gone by, we would have done the main island, St. Vincent, but this year we will be going to the Grenadines, and the media tour is just an opportunity for the media to help us to lift the image of the destination, right? And for you to become more exposed to the tourism product in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On the 16th, we have our Know Your Country tour. And this Know Your Country tour, we are targeting ministries, officials, and ministries officers, because we realize that we want everybody to become Vinci hosts. We are talking about the reopening of our season. When the season opens, there would be persons, whether it be students, there would be persons from the ministry, businesses, they would be approached by our visitors. They would ask them questions. And it's important for us to be hosts, our hostess to our visitors, to know about our destination. So this is an opportunity for persons to know about their destination and to be a proud ambassador or a proud Vinci host. On the 18th, we would have our Rural Tourism Career Fair. This career fair would focus more on the primary and secondary school students. We would have stakeholders from different sectors or subsectors within the industry, just allowing persons or students to have an appreciation for what they do and their different types of products that they they offer to the destination. We would also have a community clean-up and beautification competition. This would be on the 22nd, and the judging of the competition will be on the 22nd for Beckwith, and in Union Island we would have the judging on the 25th of November. We want our stakeholders to know that it's a shared responsibility and it's everybody's business to keep our destination clean. Minister mentioned the importance of the quality in terms of what we present to our visitors. And I am glad that we have the Beckwith Tourism Association on board with us for this cleanup competition. We also have solid waste. We have the SVG Conservation Fund. We have the Remnant Project. They too are joining us or partnering with us to ensure that we facilitate this competition. So Union Island Tourist Board, they also are with us with this competition. And on the 24th of November, we would welcome our first inaugural ship to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for this season. It is none other than Rhapsody of the Sea. Rhapsody of the Sea has a capacity of 2,416 visitors, and usually we'll have Port Authority, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines Tourism Authority and the ministry putting together a welcome package just to make them feel, welcome and give them a taste of St. Vincent and the Grenadines right at the port. On the 29th of November, we would have our tourism panel discussion. And this tourism panel discussion is for every one of us because it focuses on linkages between tourism and the different industries in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And again, earlier, our minister, he spoke about the farmers, the fisher folks, the taxi operators, the divers, the tour guides, and so on. Every one of us, there is a link. And in order for tourism to work, we have to understand our product and we have to work together to see how we can, build on it and enhance it. So we will have that panel discussion at the Kingstown Methodist Church Hall, and our featured speaker for that panel discussion is none other than our lead expert for Tourism Master Plan. She is Dr. Jennifer Edwards. She is quite knowledgeable about the destination. She has worked in the region and she has also worked internationally. And we are looking forward to the support of all our stakeholders. Here is your opportunity to discuss, to hear from us, and, to play a part and to give in terms of your knowledge, and as we work together to just share and build on this industry. And of course, for our final event or our final activity, we would have our tourism awards and cocktail. Last year, for the last 2 years, we were unable to have this cocktail, but every year we would usually celebrate or give award to our stakeholders. So you may hear about the best tour guide, most improved tourism site. You may even hear about best tour operators. And we are looking forward to this year's cocktail. Again, our stakeholders, you have shown that you are just as resilient as the industry, and you have been committed to us and committed to tourism, and we want to appreciate you and we want to celebrate you. So Tourism Month is for everyone. As the theme says, tourism is everyone's business. We have to live it, we have to love it, and we have to embrace it, and we have to get involved in tourism development. So that's it for Tourism Month. Do you have any questions?
What's the venue for the cocktail and reception?
We are still working on the details for the cocktail.
Flights from Heathrow, which will see a larger 7879 Dreamliner coming to St. Vincent. It came yesterday for the first time, and hopefully we'll see that being a familiar operation here in St. Vincent at Argyle International Airport. Once again, thank you, and God bless.